in fact, if I can pick up the question from social media, yesterday we did a program and it says here, leave the mosques open. Who are we to close the mosque? Now, it's in relation to the government guidance when they say place of worship can be kept open for at least individual prayer, if not congregation. Then why are we in a position that we, based on certain discussion, or rather some would say allegation, that we won't be able to control the congregation inside the masjid, and that's why we don't have enough manpower, so that's why we're closing down the masjid. Some use these arguments. How appropriate is that?
Look, not to fob off the question, but I do sometimes feel as though these types of we're in a democracy and people do like to engage and have lots of discussion about questions that ultimately are political in nature. This is, Muslims have not been singled out when it comes to the question of places of worship.
Correct.
The rules have been applied equally to all places of worship. Yes.
Correct.
It affects us differently because of the fact that masjid-based worship isn't like church-based worship. Church-based worship is mainly individual. Masjid-based worship is mainly congregational. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, we are affected by it more. We're disproportionately affected, right? But we have not been singled out by the rule. And I think we should recognize that. And perhaps, and I hope people don't mind me saying this, use our time, find better things to do with our time, because our debates and our discussions about this are not going to change anything. If anything, if anybody wants to do something constructive in this kind of a scenario where you want to have something to say, you want your voice heard in a matter that affects the Muslim community, then think about constructive efforts like working towards and supporting efforts to develop a strong Muslim lobby, and empowering and financially supporting with money and manpower and ideas and so on, supporting organizations that represent the Muslim community's interests, and ensuring that they have the kind of resources and the kind of manpower and the kind of capacity that other representation-based organizations have, like the Jewish community has, and so on, that has the power and the resources to be able to lobby in matters that concern the Muslim community. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, when these types of decisions are made, and we know that we have to go along with it and follow the rule, and and the rules apply to everybody effectively, then I think there's nothing left for us to do other than make the most out of the situation and do the best that we can. Right? We can't come out of this. No amount of outrage and expression of outrage is going to change the fact that these rules are in place now, and the lockdown is in place. So, I know we want our voices heard, and I know people want their grievance heard, etc. But there are mechanisms for that the Muslim community doesn't have. We don't have effective mechanisms for our voices to be heard. We don't have effective mechanisms to lobby the government when we are affected by certain issues. That is the bigger issue. That is the bigger picture.
So when you say we don't have, that means we need people who are actively engaging in the mainstream society.
Well, we have organizations, right? We have organizations, regardless of what you think about them and whether you think they represent you or not, MCB and others, right? And other organizations like MCB, they are there. This is supposed to be their job. They're supposed to be the voice of the Muslim community, or at least, to be more technical, the voice of their delegates, their representatives, the people that they represent, their affiliates, if you like. But they are not sufficiently resourced. Our organizations are extremely weak. All right, I'll give you an example. Recently, because of this RSC issue, I've been making this point again and again. And, it's not exactly the same issue, but the principle is the same, that it's a question of our voices being heard, Muslim community issues being represented effectively, the way it's done in other communities, right? I'll give you an example, right? That the LGBT community has Stonewall Equality representing their interests, right? And their needs and so on. And they lobby heavily, very well organized, very effective. Now, this is not a question of their rights and etc. That's not the point. But the point is, just if you do a resource comparison, right? Their last accounts show that in the last submitted account year, the year that they submitted accounts for, I think it was 2018, 2019, their total spend on their community's interests, right, on the LGBT community's interest, by Stonewall Equality was £9 million.
Substantial, very, very
£9 million, right? And, you know, it's staffed by 150 people. The organization has 150 staff. Now, compare that with any Muslim organization that does work that's in any way similar in terms of lobbying, in terms of representing, and so on and so forth, and you'll get your answer. We haven't got the mechanism, and we haven't invested in the mechanism. And when these organizations ask for support, nobody supports them.